Hello and welcome. From being a dark continent amongst continents, Africa evolved into a region of hope with enormous resources that present growth opportunities not only to herself, but also to the rest of the world. But the side effects of widespread poverty and widening inequality ensures that Africa is a high-risk continent characterized by trade restrictions and weak institutions. This is Africa This Week, and I'm your guide, Fadishola Shutingwa. We start off the day with earlier in the week. Welcome on board. On Monday, Liberia's President George Weah said he couldn't offer any quick fixes, but rather steady progress towards the goals of Liberians. Weah told crowds at his inauguration ceremony in Monrovia that his biggest priorities would be to fight corruption, pay civil servants a living wage, and show the private sector that Liberia was open for business. He thanked his predecessor, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, for bringing peace to the country after years of civil war. Monday's swearing ceremony is Liberia's first transition between democratically elected leaders since 1944. Still on Monday, South Africa's police responded with tear gas and rubber bullets in Krugersdorp as protesters complaining of drug crime and human trafficking blocked roads in the town. Protesters said they were reacting to local drug problems, which they blamed on foreign nationals living in the town, particularly Nigerians. A flyer distributed around Krugersdorp had urged residents to unite and reclaim the town from crime, drugs, and human trafficking. But a police spokesperson said the protest had been sparked by an allegation by one woman that she had been kidnapped by foreign nationals.
Inviting on the government to take further actions regarding these Nigerians who are busy selling drugs, destroying our communities in particular. That's why we are here.
Earlier during the week, there was a woman who claimed that she had been kidnapped by foreign nationals. The community had those allegations and they involved themselves in vigilantism. We have deployed enough members to contain the situation, but we want to warn those who are involved in violence that we'll make sure that they are being arrested.
Nigeria's former president, Olusegun Obasanjo, on Tuesday advised President Muhammadu Buhari not to seek re-election come 2019. In a 13-page letter, Obasanjo said President Buhari has performed far below expectation and should honorably, in quote, dismount the horse, end quote, to join the league of the country's former leaders whose experience, influence, wisdom and outreach can be deployed on the sideline for the good of the country. The two-term president said he felt disappointed by Buhari, whom he supported during the 2015 election, over then-incumbent and candidate of his former party, the People's Democratic Party, Goodluck Jonathan. And although Buhari has not publicly declared interest in the 2019 election, indications are clear that he is interested in seeking re-election. While praising Buhari for his effort in fighting the Boko Haram insurgency and his fight against corruption, Obasanjo said Buhari has failed in other areas where he had thought he would be efficient. Obasanjo also appealed to Buhari to consider retiring to take a rest. On Wednesday in Libya, the death toll from Monday's twin car bombing in Benghazi rose to 35. More than 30 people were also wounded in the incident that recorded the highest death toll from a single attack since Libya slid into turmoil after the 2011 uprising, which toppled Muammar Gaddafi. Officials say the victims include both military personnel and civilians, and there is yet no immediate claim of responsibility for the attack. Benghazi is controlled by the Libyan National Army, led by powerful eastern-based commander Khalifa Haftar, who was battling Islamists and other opponents in the port city until late last year. And still on Wednesday, Pope Francis appealed for peace in the Democratic Republic of Congo, the DRC, and says the Catholic Church wants to contribute to the common good of society. Pope Francis said this during his weekly address at St. Peter's Square, appealing to the government to try to avoid any form of violence. Security forces in the Democratic Republic of Congo had earlier killed at least 6 people and wounded dozens more. This was as a result of the use of tear gas fired to disperse a protest that the Catholic Church had organized, triggering widespread international condemnation. On Thursday, the United Nations peacekeeping chief, Pierre Lacroix, said the international community will not tolerate the violation of the cessation of hostilities in South Sudan. Lacroix urged the Security Council to speak out very clearly against the violations and take decisive actions against the violators. He called on President Kiir to put an end to the impunity, as South Sudanese women and girls cannot continue to be victimized and brutalized.
I call on President Kiir to put an end to this impunity. South Sudanese women and girls cannot continue to be victimized and brutalized with no justice served.
I condemn this act of violence and call upon all signatories to the cessation of hostilities agreement to disseminate the terms of the agreement to their subordinate commanders and ensure immediate and consistent compliance.
I call upon the Security Council members to help mobilize timely investment in the 2018 humanitarian response plan to ensure life-saving assistance reaches most people in need, and to use your influence to ensure that the parties to the conflict comply with all their obligations under international humanitarian law.
And still on Thursday, the UN chief in Somalia, Michael Keating, said the country is making significant progress, although the risks remain high. Keating expressed his encouragement by the stabilization of the relationship between the government and its states after a period of tension late last year. He said continuous progress depends on a strong political will, also calling for humanitarian efforts to be scaled up.
Defeating al-Shabaab, Mr. President, requires both a military and a political strategy, the use of both sticks and carrots, as well as sustained efforts to address deficits that lend extremists a degree of credibility. These include corruption, lack of education and job opportunities for young people, weak national justice and corrections capacity, and grievances arising from unresolved disputes.
The recently conducted Operation Readiness Assessment, ORA, revealed that SNA with Somali National Army lacks properly trained manpower, barracks, weapons and ammunition, as well as logistical support. The Somali National Army needs to be capacitated in all fields, training, equipment, mobility, and weapons to be able to inherit, hold, and preserve the gains achieved. Without the support from above-mentioned constraints, transition from AMISOM to Somali National Security Forces will be a mirage. Transition from AMISOM to SNA should be a condition-based.
On Friday, the head of the ruling African National Congress, the ANC in South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, said investors are excited about a new era in the country. On the sidelines of the Davos Economic Summit, Ramaphosa said investors had demonstrated that South Africa was still an important destination for investment. He succeeded Jacob Zuma as ANC's leader last month, and there have since been increasing calls from within the party for Zuma to be forced out.
I think we're going back home filled with a great deal of confidence, that the international investing community has in us. They have demonstrated that South Africa is still an important destination for investment. All the meetings that we have heard, we've had nothing negative that has been said about our country, and all what we've heard has been encouragement. You're on the right course, keep going, and we applaud you for this new era that has been unleashed in South Africa, and they're wishing us everything of the best. Positive thing about all the state capture process is that, one, we are now going to go to the depths of what corruption has been taking place in our state-owned enterprises. I think that is a huge plus. Two, we've got an independent judge who's going to look at all this.
And with that, we have come to the end of Earlier in the Week. Up next is Dig and Dip, but that is after the break. Do stay with us. Welcome back to Africa This Week. Less than 3 years into an administration led by Nigeria's All Progressives Congress, the APC, an 18-page letter from a former president to a sitting president continues to generate mixed reactions, showing there is a thin line between say Baba and you need to rest, Baba. History shows that former President Olusegun Obasanjo's collection of open letters includes one he wrote to former UK Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher in 1986, followed by a note to his then-party chairman Audu Ogbe in 2004. Then the political epistle to former President Goodluck Jonathan in 2013, and now the 2018 clarion call to President Muhammadu Buhari. Joining me to dig deep on Africa This Week is Nelson Ekujimi, a political analyst and chairman, Committee for Protection of the People's Mandate. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
A brazen and damning letter. What is your assessment of that letter from former President Olusegun Obasanjo telling current President Buhari not to seek re-election in 2019?
Well, thank you very much. I think we must have it very clear at the back of our mind that former President Olusegun Obasanjo is a respectable Nigerian citizen, a former president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And I want to give him the benefit that that letter is a summation.
Benefit of the doubt.
Benefit of the doubt, of the summation of his own feelings, which does not in any way represent the feelings of the generality of the Nigerian people. And the fact that former President Olusegun Obasanjo wrote that letter on that issue means he's also, keeping tab on happenings and, as a responsible citizen, is making his feelings known. And, like we all know, there's always two sides to a coin.
Indeed.
While some will be against, some will be for. It tells you clearly that former President Olusegun Obasanjo has an agenda he's pursuing, which with time will unfold. But for a lot of Nigerians, I don't think we're on the same page with ex-President Obasanjo on this letter.
Interesting. You said he has an agenda, but we will get to that in the course of this program. But President Obasanjo, former president, he raised concerns about our present president, Buhari's health, his age, nepotism, sectionalism in his appointments to public office, and the poor handling of the economy, as well as the herdsman-farmer crisis, amongst other issues. Now, how would you describe all of this? Was he fair in his assessment?
I think former President Olusegun Obasanjo is behaving like we all know. Which is that he's a saint, he's a Mr. Know-all, because you can see him talking of a myriad of issues for which, if you ask me, the only area of competence that you can tell me he has is his military background, which is about security. And I'm sure he alluded to the fact that the government has made a lot of progress with tackling the insurgency by the Boko Haram. Talking about economy, I don't know where former President Olusegun Obasanjo obtained his expertise to be able to tell us how the Nigerian economy is doing now. Talking about sectionalism in appointment, I'm sure former President Olusegun Obasanjo is very much aware that there are constitutional provisions with relating to appointment by the office of the president. And where the office of the president runs foul of this, one expects former President Olusegun Obasanjo to be responsible enough to mobilize forces to challenge such violations through the civilized means, which is the courts. And talking about, what else did this talk about there?
The farmer herdsmen clashes.
The farmers herdsmen clashes, except if
sectionalism,
except if former President Olusegun Obasanjo is the one in charge of our security matters. That is when we'll see he has a brief on his table, and he's now pointing accusing fingers. Don't forget also that during the previous administration before this, former President Olusegun Obasanjo also raised concern about the insurgency of Boko Haram.
Yes.
You know, so for some of us, for former President Olusegun Obasanjo talking about age, I'm sure you and I know very well that even younger men who are in their 40s or 30s drop dead all of a sudden, not to talk of somebody who is approaching 80. And talking about health, I'm very, very sure, I can state it authoritatively here this afternoon, that former President Olusegun Obasanjo is not a medical practitioner. He doesn't have the medical history of the incumbent president. So he is not competent to talk about that.
Okay, this is all bashing, but don't you think we should at least take the message in terms of our economy and not the messenger? Let's block the messenger and take the message.
No. Jesus said, I'm a Christian, that from a good tree comes forth good fruit. You know, like I'm a Yoruba man, and there's this proverb in Yoruba land that says, Orojun lenu ashe gita. Meaning, let me translate it in English, that a man who is undergoing pains cannot tell you sweet stories.
Okay.
He will always be telling you, oh, I'm having pains there. It will be sour stories. So in as much as President Obasanjo has the right to voice his opinion, it will be more honorable if he keeps it to himself and stop assaulting public sensibilities.
Well, people have criticized him that he is patently guilty of the exact same things he has accused.
You see, President Obasanjo is former President Obasanjo is one man that will never see any fault with himself. This was a man that tried to foist an illegal and unconstitutional third term
on Nigeria.
This is a former president who mobilized for the assault on the constitution of Nigeria through the abduction of a sitting governor in Anambra State, the now Minister for Labour, Dr. Chris Ngige. We can roll out a plethora of atrocities committed against the Nigerian constitution by former President Obasanjo.
There's the citing of the Halliburton and Siemens scandal. There's the obscene fundraiser for his private library. There's the repairing of refineries. There's the $16 billion
for power that went down the drains.
Reforms. And, you know, indeed, we can go on and on with Obasanjo's faults. So let's move on now. What are your thoughts, though, on the need for a third force as raised by him? What is the chance of the opposition on the road to 2019?
Well, the chance for the opposition are as good as they putting their house in order. And the opposition has the opportunity of presenting its alternative plans and programs, you know, to address the challenges facing the Nigerian people, rather than just telling us that come 2019, we'll capture power. A lot of us are asking, you will take over power to do what? To return us to the state we were in before now? Definitely, if any party or opposition is serious about the Nigerian situation, it is now time for them to sit down and itemize these problems and, you know, profile solutions and sell this manifesto to the people. Because whether we like it or not, the decision to either elect or reject somebody at the polls lies with the electorate and not for somebody writing letters.
Indeed it does. But before we go, let's quickly get your reaction to the president's response to that letter.
It was very presidential. They didn't go the way of former President Olusegun Obasanjo.
It was,
you know, former President Olusegun Obasanjo was once described by Professor Wole Soyinka as a man who is fond of throwing mud on people, and everybody runs away because you don't know where the next mud is going to throw it, the direction. And also, don't forget, at a point in time in the history of this country, former President Olusegun Obasanjo derided the former president of Nigeria, that is the late Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, when he was given the traditional title of Uwele of Onitsha. Former President Obasanjo said late Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe denigrated from the status of Zik of Africa to Uwele of Onitsha, a local hero. And at a point in time in the political history of this country, former President Olusegun Obasanjo also became a local warlord. He was given the title of Balogun of Owu. So we now refer him to his denigration of other, you know, he's fond of doing that.
Very quickly, a group has described the letter as an open confrontation against the North. What's your reaction?
No. President Muhammadu Buhari does not represent any region of this country.
All right.
He's the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, okay. So I disagree totally with that.
All right, that's where we're going to have to leave it. Nelson Ekujimi, political analyst and chairman, Committee for the Protection of the People's Mandate. I'd like to thank you for joining me on Africa This Week.
Thanks very much.
Well, so much for political developments across Africa, with a more politically conscious electorate, especially in Nigeria, ready to take their destinies in their hands. Expectations remain high on the Buhari-led government to tackle the rising unemployment, the growing uncertainty, and the widening inequality. Analysts have preached, forget the messenger, but take the message. This is a nation where the next big test is just an election away. I have been your guide, Fadishola Shetingwameni. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.